Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. It is showtime here at the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast. This is the Commish coming to you along with our newly appointed producer, Belt Loops. How you doing tonight, Belt Loops?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It's a very exciting show tonight. I'm excited because the Julio Jones trade over this past week, really shook things up in the fantasy world. We also have all of those draft picks from April. Where are they going to fit in? We got to see what kind of role they're going to play in our fantasy rosters. Do we draft the rookies? When do we draft them? Who do we draft? And we're going to talk about that after we get into the news of the week, which is the big Julio Jones trade. Not a lot going on in the NFL right now. There's still a lot of free agents. Looks like we already got a call. There's not a lot of free agents on the market that are left on the market that haven't been picked up yet. No big names, maybe people like Todd Gurley, but there's really no big names out there. Kerryon Johnson, but I think teams are going to wait to see what happens in camp before they move forward. We got a call coming in from Kenneth, and before we take the call, I wanted to just remind everybody that there are many different ways that you could enjoy the show. You could listen to the show, you can watch the show, you could call into the show, you could do all three. If you want to call into the show, you're welcome to 772-800-BUZZ or 2899. You can also comment on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, depending on what you're watching it on right now. Once you put a comment in there, we get the comment here at the studio, and Belt Loops will make sure that your comment is brought up on the screen and we can address whatever question that you might have. But in the meantime, let's get right to Kenneth. Kenneth, how are you tonight?
Pretty good. And first off, Belt Loops, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kenneth.
I was wanting to get y'all's take in regards to that trade that went down.
You're talking about the Julio Jones trade?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We're going to talk about that. But what are your thoughts on it?
I'm very intrigued to see how this trade goes down, because you got to factor in guys like A.J. Brown, I believe, and what about Derrick Henry?
Yeah. It's a good point. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down all the different players from both the Titans and the Falcons and see, who benefited from this deal, who got hurt by this deal. And before we get into the individual players, there's something I want to bring up, which is, what is Atlanta thinking? Let's talk about it from an NFL standpoint rather than necessarily a fantasy football standpoint. What is Atlanta thinking? They drafted Kyle Pitts number 4. I'm sorry, no, number 3, right? Or no, 2, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it was 4. Sorry, we had 4. We went down to 6. Right, it was number 4. And they said, well, you know what? Maybe we'll give it another shot. We still got Matty Ice back there slinging the ball. They don't have a running back. Their quarterback is at the end of his career. And what do? They take a tight end at number 4. Then you think, okay, well, maybe they're going to try to salvage what's left of Matt Ryan, but then they get rid of Julio Jones. So I don't understand what's going on. I know the Dolphins over the years have made some really bonehead moves, but I don't know if they picked up Kyle Pitts out of spite. I know they didn't know at the time that Julio was necessarily interested in getting away from that team, but I'm really intrigued by what the Falcons did. Do you have any thoughts on that at all, or? Can you not hear me?
You talking to me or to Kenneth?
No, I was talking to you. Kenneth is off. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I'm not sure if the Falcons knew during the draft what was going on in Julio's head. If they knew, maybe they don't take tight end Kyle Pitts, even though he is a very dominant player.
Absolutely.
But they also, I mean, Kyle Pitts and any of the other rookie receivers are very different. There were no receivers taken that were 6'6". They're all 6 foot, 5'11", 5'10".
Right.
But I think with Matty Ice, even at the end of his career, throwing to somebody like Calvin Ridley and a young Kyle Pitts, I think Kyle Pitts' presence and what he did at Florida, if he's able to produce the same early on, I don't know if the Falcons fans will necessarily miss Julio on the field.
That's an interesting take, and let's explore that by actually going into each of these teams and talk about the players. And of course, want to know what you think. Go ahead and give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or make a comment in YouTube Live or in Facebook Live, and we'll address it right away. In fact,
we got some comments on here.
All right, so Kenneth says that the Titans got the better end of the deal. I agree. I absolutely agree. A second rounder for Julio, and we'll talk about his injury history in the past. His reason is because it helps A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. And Kenneth also thinks it especially helps Henry in the running game. And that may be so, but let's talk about that. First of all, let me ask you, Belt Loops, who do you think what one player benefited the most on a fantasy level from this deal?
Ryan Tannehill.
Okay. All right. I actually think it's Kyle Pitts, but we'll talk about that. And again, I'm not suggesting, by the way, that Kyle Pitts is going to be a top 5 tight end. This year in fantasy, I don't think that's going to happen. But from where he was before the Julio trade to where he's going to be now, I think, and again, we don't know what's going to happen with Hayden Hurst. We don't know that dynamic that's going to happen in Atlanta. But let's talk about Ryan Tannehill for a second. And it's very possible that you are correct. And mainly because of Tannehill's accuracy. And I was looking at some numbers here, and I saw that last year in the NFL on deep throws, which is anything over 20 yards, Ryan Tannehill was actually number 3 in the league in accuracy on those long throws. He was at 49%, as opposed to Matt Ryan, who was number 18 at 39%. Well, guess what? That number is probably going to do even better now. But then we bring up the issue of what happened last year. Who was Tannehill throwing to last year, right? It was the 3-headed monster of A.J. Brown. You had Adam Humphries and Corey Davis, right?
Yep.
So at the 3 of those, Tannehill threw the ball 466 times. Out of those 466 times, 270 of them were to wide receivers, which not just 270, those are targets. So it's a big number, and I think that number is going to get even better. The question is, though, does Julio Jones take all of those passes that were going to Humphries and Davis? I know they got Josh Reynolds in free agency, and Reynolds is going to come in, and he'll be a nice player. But if Julio stays healthy, I actually see Julio going off in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. A.J. Brown, Kenneth wants to say, hey, Kenneth.
Hey, I got a little bit of breaking news for you regarding the 49ers that might be of interest to you.
Okay.
Offensive lineman Justin Scully and safety Travarius Moore are both out for the year. Scully with a torn anterior cruciate ligament in his knee, and Moore tore his Achilles.
Wow. All right. The injuries in San Francisco just keep piling up. They've had the worst luck.
They can't catch a break. It was Deebo Samuel last year, too.
Yeah, that's true. So it'll be, well, thank you, Kenneth. We appreciate that. So getting back to the issue of the players who will be affected by the Julio Jones trade. I really think Julio is not going to necessarily get the 40% of the passes that were thrown to those two guys. A.J. Brown, by the way, had 29% of Tannehill's passes. The other two were 47%. Will Julio get 47%? No. I think A.J. Brown's numbers are going to increase I think Julio Jones' numbers are going to increase. But let's now talk about Derrick Henry, right? Not that Derrick Henry has to worry about safeties because he'll just run right over them. But does this help Derrick Henry at all, or is it really neither here nor there?
I don't really know. I really don't know, honestly.
Well, look, let's put it this way. Safeties didn't used to have to worry too much about doubling Corey Davis or Adam Humphries. If the safety was gonna double or help out a cornerback, it was gonna be on A.J. Brown. Well, now you can't do that, right? So you don't have a safety cheating up in the box waiting for Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree that Derrick Henry, that this will definitely help him. I just think that there may, I'm not sure. I was thinking there may be less balls to go around on every play. But if Tannehill threw to Adam Humphries and Corey Davis 47% of the time out of those passes, I don't see Julio getting more than that. So I think all around in Tennessee, I think Tannehill's going to do better. I think you're going to have Derrick Henry do better. A.J. Brown probably stay the same. But I think Julio is obviously, if he stays healthy, going to do much better. And staying healthy, by the way, for someone who had Julio last year is a big issue because he was extremely frustrating.
So I have an interesting question.
Yeah.
Right now, Julio obviously has never played a snap for the Tennessee Titans. Going into week 1, who's wide receiver 1 for Tennessee?
For Tennessee, wide receiver 1 has to be A.J. Brown until
there's some sort of takeover by Julio.
Until there's a takeover, will Julio? It's a different system, right? So he's got to learn a different system. Health is always an issue. So I think A.J. Brown is treated as that number 1. Tannehill has the chemistry with Brown. We know that. So it'll take some time, but by halfway, it's a good question, by the way. I would say midpoint or halfway through the season, you might see that shift. Remember, there were games where A.J. Brown disappeared and Corey Davis was like Superman. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. Not that A.J. Brown is necessarily going to disappear, but you're going to see less targets. Even though 29% is still a low target amount, you're going to get less targets because you're going to have Julio Jones to contend with. On the Atlanta side of the ball, Calvin Ridley, does he get a boost, or is he going to get double covered more?
Honestly, I think yes to both of those. I think he is going to get extra balls thrown to him. I don't know what their trust level is with Pitts or their other receivers at this moment in time, but I do think even though he might be getting those extra balls, he's still getting possibly double covered.
Yeah, and you know what I find very interesting is that Calvin Ridley was the 4th highest fantasy scoring wide receiver last year. He was only targeted 143 times. And when I say only targeted 143 times, the next most on Atlanta was Russell Gage at 110. So it's not like Ridley got all of the targets. And Russell Gage kind of took over for Julio and ended up getting Julio's targets when Julio was hurt. So the question then is, will that same duo of Ridley and Gage maintain that same level? Now, remember, Gage didn't get touchdowns. He didn't have a lot of scoring opportunities that Ridley had. But now that you bring in Kyle Pitts, and if they can work an offense with the 2 tight ends with Hayden Hurst and Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage, who knows?
Yeah.
And who knows whether or not that's going to affect Matt Ryan. Remember, look, Matt Ryan wasn't necessarily a high draft pick last year. And that was with everyone assuming that Julio was going to be in good shape. But without
Yeah.
Julio, Matt Ryan actually was under Tua and Fitzpatrick. He was, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18th in the league last year, Matt Ryan. So does Matt Ryan move at all from 18, or is that about where he's going to end up, even though we're now, we lose Julio, but we're bringing in Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I think it stays close to the same. I don't see him going up, maybe a little down, but 18 does sound kind of right there. I think Matt Ryan might throw away from Russell Gage now that he has Kyle Pitts there, and Kyle Pitts has the potential to be a top five tight end in the league. It won't be this year, but I think those balls that aren't being thrown to Julio will be probably thrown tight ends' ways, people who can just get down there.
Right. Yep, I agree. So Kenneth wants to know, at what round do we take someone like A.J. Brown and Julio Jones? And I have A.J. Brown as my wide receiver, as the sixth best wide receiver in the draft this year, and that's even with the Julio Jones acquisition. And wide receiver 6 is usually around the third round, the beginning of the third round. He is definitely a wide receiver 1 in my opinion. And when I say wide receiver 1 versus 6, when I said wide receiver 6, I mean he's the sixth best wide receiver. Wide receiver 1 meaning he's going to be my number 1 receiver on my fantasy team. Whereas Julio Jones, I'm waiting. I'm probably not till the 5th round. I have him all the way down as wide receiver 17. There's many guys that are going to be a wide receiver number 1. Julio, until you can prove to me different, is a wide receiver number 2 to me, even after this trade and even with Tannehill, mainly because of health and a new system, but mainly because of health on that side. All right, so I'm kind of done with my take on this trade. If any of you have any questions, you want to know where you should take a certain player, I want to get your thoughts on this trade as well. You can comment on YouTube Live or on Facebook Live, 772-800-BUZZ. You can call in and we'll answer your questions. And what I want to do now is move on to the rookies. We had a very exciting offensive draft this year. Lots of guys. You had 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round. You had, I believe, two running backs taken in the first round. Plenty of receivers taken in the first round. The question is, where do they go in fantasy? And I want to start with quarterbacks, and we'll start with the number 1 pick overall, who went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's Trevor Lawrence. So the question is, has Jacksonville done anything that would make you think that Trevor Lawrence is fantasy worthy? Look, people were taking Burrow early, not early, but they were definitely taking him as a quarterback 2 last year. And Herbert ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy last year. Are we going to see that same type of ascension into the ranks as we have with the others? Do we see that with Trevor Lawrence?
I personally don't think so. I don't think so. I think the Chargers were in a different place last year than where the Jags are right now when they selected Herbert at number 6.
Yeah.
That team has Keenan Allen. I couldn't tell you who number 1 receiver is on the Jags right now, but DJ Chark maybe. But he's not Keenan Allen. You need a veteran, former Pro Bowl wide receiver if you want to produce numbers similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to have a bad year, but it's not going to be what Herbert did.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I have DJ Chark as actually my 31st best receiver. So Jacksonville's top receiver is all the way down to 31. and Laviska Shenault all the way down to 41. I don't see the weapons.
Yeah.
That's just another team that I was intrigued by the fact that they went ahead and grabbed Etienne, which we'll talk about when we talk about running backs. But I have to agree with you. I don't think he's a quarterback number one. He does have some upside as a quarterback number two. I've actually ranked him as quarterback 15, meaning that he would be your QB2. You could play him on a bye week, or if your guy gets hurt, probably around the 12th round. But for somebody like Trevor Lawrence, I'm not going to make a decision on until after preseason and we see what's going on. It looks like our triumvirate is now complete with 2020. How are you, 2020? How are things going?
I am doing good. I'm very, very sorry that I'm entering the stream late. I was having dinner with a couple guys from Pro Football Focus and some scouts. I really wanted to come ultra prepared to tonight's show. So it's just a little more detained than I would have liked to have been. But I got to tell you, man, I am stoked and very excited to be here. How you guys doing?
We're doing good, and I failed to mention at the beginning the reason I was on with Jim. Oh, we got some echo going on. The reason that Cyclops is in here tonight is he has some family emergency issues going on, and I know that the three of us have our thoughts and prayers with him and his family. And we really hope that that everything works out well and that everyone's going to be okay. But we do have 2020 with us. We were just talking about the rookies. We finished talking about the Julio Jones trade and the impact that will have on fantasy. We were talking about Trevor Lawrence. Is that somebody you would draft, Keith?
Sorry about that. Just trying to deal with a little noise in the background. Just getting my studio legs back under me after a little bit of a hiatus. The answer is no. Honestly, I think in a dynasty league, but obviously yes, because I think he is a total talent. And I apologize for the echo. I'm going to handle that in a second. But on a team that's a run first team with Robinson and Etienne there, I would not have him as even in a QB2 league. I don't know that I would have him starting for me, to be quite honest with you. But I think he's going to be a hell of a player, just not this year for fantasy.
Yeah, I think we have to wait and see what happens in preseason to see where the Jaguars put him, how they play in that system, what kind of tools and weapons he has. But I agree with you. I agree with Bell Loops. Without the tools and weapons, I don't know if he's draftable yet. But Zach Wilson now, right? The Jets come in. They needed a quarterback. They traded away Sam Darnold. They come in. They grab Zach Wilson. What do you guys think he's going to do?
It's another guy who I think also pretty talented. They have beefed up their offensive line some. It looks a little better there. And I think the best thing Zach Wilson has going is the coaching around him. Saleh is a hell of a coach, and something that he was a part of the mastermind behind some of the offenses, especially what's going on in San Fran.
No,
I wouldn't have him on my team. No, I'm not saying I would never have him. I'm saying I like him for the future, but no way is this someone.
No.
Again,
what I'm saying is, you're talking about the coach, a defensive coach who dealt with an offense in San Francisco that was with Jimmy Garoppolo that did nothing. I mean, look, he seems like a guy that can fire people up and motivate them, but
that's what I mean.
Guy that's going to make Zach Wilson worth anything? I mean, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder. Look, he has more tools than Trevor Lawrence. There's no doubt. That line, even with Becton, still is terrible.
You know what? I don't know that he has more tools than Lawrence. I like Chark and Laviska Shenault as a second-year wideout. I think Lawrence might have more weapons to work with. I like the running backs better in Jacksonville. But I think we both can agree. These are going to be good NFL quarterbacks. We think, you never know. There's the Ryan Leafs out there. You have no idea. But as far as fantasy, dude, these guys should not be on your teams.
What about Justin Fields?
Now, that's a little bit of an interesting situation because Matt Nagy is a very good offensive mind. He was a big part of why Kansas City was so successful. And you got Allen Robinson there. They drafted a nice wideout as well. But a first-year quarterback, it's the Justin
I don't even know if he's
Herbert.
going to start. First of all, let's
That's the other thing.
Right, they have Andy Dalton.
With Dalton there, right?
We don't know whether or not he even starts, but if he comes out the way that Dak Prescott did in preseason of his rookie year, or Jacoby Brissett, but if he comes out with the way that Dak Prescott did for Dallas in his rookie preseason, you might see Justin Fields a lot sooner. But is Justin Fields the guy that can even get the ball to Allen Robinson? There's no doubt that Robinson is a top wide receiver, but and when we start talking about wide receivers for who you should draft that aren't rookies, we'll get into that. But for now, I have to agree. I don't think Justin Fields is somebody you want to touch. These are guys that are flyers. If they have good preseasons and you have somebody like Patrick Mahomes and you wait until the end of the draft to get your backup quarterback, fine, take a chance. Grab a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence. But what about someone like Trey Lance? Let's put it this way. What if Trey Lance starts? It's determined week 1 that Trey Lance starts for the 49ers. What do you do?
I think of all the quarterbacks that are coming in as rookies, Justin Fields and Trey Lance, these are the two that have the best possibility of having any fantasy relevance. I love the Shanahan offense. And you know something? You have to love his weapons. Brandon Ayuk really came on last year. Deebo Samuel's phenomenal. He's going to be a great second-year receiver. And you got arguably the first or second best tight end there under that Kyle Shanahan offense to go with. They picked up a nice running back in the draft. So I honestly think he is probably, of all the quarterbacks, the most fantasy ready. But the question is, who's going to start? It probably will be Garoppolo out of the gate. You might see kind of what happened with Fitzpatrick and Tua last year, fifth, sixth game in. So,
all right. So here's the question for you.
Yeah.
For both of you. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, you have to draft one of them. Who are you drafting for fantasy?
Go ahead, Josh. I'll let you go first.
To be honest, I think I would take Zach Wilson. I think out of all of them, I'd take Wilson. I know you guys said
Trey
Lance.
It was nice having you on the show.
What's up?
I said it was nice having you on the show.
Yeah. I know we don't like the Jets.
No.
At least over here, not in my house. Like even though Trey Lance might be the most fantasy ready, talented young receivers, I think you're gonna hate me when I say this. I think Zach Wilson might coming in have like a little it factor in him. I think his receivers are talented. I think their tight ends are talented. Whoever it is, Chris Herndon. I think he could succeed early on. If I had to draft him, I won't. But if I had to,
all right. What about you?
I got to stick with Trey Lance. I just think the system is there. The tools are there. They're in a division that scores a lot. They get to play Seattle twice. That defense looked a little better last year, but I like Trey Lance from a fantasy standpoint. Absolutely.
All right, I'll go with Trevor Lawrence. So this will be interesting to see what happens.
You should mark this down.
All right, so let's go into the rookie running backs.
Yep.
Right, Najee Harris, somebody that I was hoping the Dolphins would draft at 18, ended up going to Pittsburgh. This guy could be absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Before I tell you where I would necessarily draft him, I found some stats that I thought was interesting. Last year, but James Conner was constantly hurt. He was on and off the field. COVID, all those issues, right, that they had. Pittsburgh rushed it 373 times. Passed it 656 times, almost double. Now, back in 2017, when they still had Bell, they had 437 rushes versus 590. I think what you're going to see is that shift back to this becoming a rushing offense. with Big Ben throwing when he needs to. That being said, where and when do you draft Najee Harris?
So you are dead on accurate. Harris fits that prototypical Mike Tomlin mold of the guy he wants to keep stuff in the ball. Just a couple of stats to add on Harris. This is a guy that averaged 6 yards per attempt, but he fits exactly what you were talking about, Commish. He had not only 26 rushing touchdowns, but he had 251 carries and nearly 300 touches. So he's got the durability to be that bell cow back. Now, I actually see in some drafts him going as high as the late first round. Me personally, I would like to try to get him in the middle of the second round, just because there's still some questionability about the strength of that offensive line. They're having a little bit of issues. So that's a concern for me because a guy like Joe Mixon's really talented, but he can't run the ball behind that line. But you'll see latest first round. For me personally, I would like to get him in the middle of the second round.
Belt loops?
No, I definitely agree with that. If he was a guy averaging 6 yards a carry at Alabama, coming into Pittsburgh, if he's able to replicate that, I think it's going to be just what you said over there. It's not going to be Big Ben throwing every single 3 to 4 downs. It's going to be Najee Harris pounding the rock, and Big Ben having to throw to guys like Juju, Claypool, whoever, when they desperately have to.
Yeah, and I agree. And I see him going – I have him as around RB 11, 12, 13. He's moved up over the past few days as I've been looking at my list. And I agree, second round, because let me explain to you who's going to be going in the first round. McCaffrey, right? Cook, Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb. Maybe Antonio Gibson after that, but then I'm going with Najee Harris. Before I'm taking Cam Akers or Mixon or CEH or Carson. I mean, who are you going to draft above Harris in that list? I don't see.
No, I agree. I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. Early to mid second round is right where he would be. Yeah. Yeah. Eckler's scary. I love him. He's just an injury risk, but I would actually probably want this because I had Eckler last year in 2 leagues and he killed me. He is a talent though, but yeah, Najee's that bell cow back.
I agree. Okay, well, what about Travis Etienne? Like as I mentioned at the beginning, I don't know why Jacksonville drafted him. I don't know if they're really going to utilize him the way that he can be utilized, but is he fantasy worthy?
The problem is it's up to you, Mrs. Robinson. This guy, people don't realize it. James Robinson was the RB7 last year. Guy was averaging 18 points a week. So he's not going anywhere. And it's a shame because Etienne, another running back I wish the Dolphins would have drafted, he is a talent, but he's not going to get utilized. The question is, who knows? None of us know how this is going to play out. But the bottom line is Robinson proved that he's very worthy of 12, 15, 18 touches a game. And why would you want to be in a backfield by committee? He'll get drafted, but I would take him middle rounds.
I would still take James Robinson ahead of Etienne.
Oh, of course.
In my draft,
yeah.
obviously. I think Jacksonville really did not, it's been said before, did not need to take him there and could have taken an O-lineman, take literally anything else except a running back.
Yeah, James Robinson actually in early drafts, they've been letting him fall. He's been going to running back 29. It boggles my mind, and unless they know something that we don't, that offense has already been determined, I don't think that that's the case. I really think they're going to lean on Robinson while they can. They know what they have. It's a known entity. I think Etienne's going to become a third down back. And maybe there'll be pressure to play him more because they picked him so high. But I just don't see it. And there's so many guys that I would pick before him. Mm-hmm. But that being said, there's always a run on running backs. You always need running backs in fantasy football. He is draftable. I just think it'll be a little while before you draft him. That brings us to Javonte Williams. Talk about another team that already has a running back. Somebody who may not have ever been on the field for an entire season running back, but with Melvin Gordon there, what kind of year can we expect from Williams, and where does he fall in fantasy?
Well, is it a year where Melvin Gordon is healthy or no?
I'm sorry?
Is it a year where Melvin Gordon is healthy or no?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think Melvin Gordon has ever been healthy for a full year. So but if Gordon is healthy at the start of the year, I don't know if Javonte is going to start over Melvin Gordon. I don't know. I have Javonte down at running back 25, meaning that he might be my third running back on my team. But I don't see me grabbing somebody like Javonte as my running back number 2. Unless I get desperate or I'm in one of these situations where I end up having to get a receiver and a quarterback early and I need running backs, then I might. But it's tough with these rookie running backs.
No, I agree with you. I have him as an RB3 flex as well. Melvin Gordon, when healthy, is a perfectly serviceable running back. Obviously, it's going to be a committee situation. It was puzzling to me that they traded up to get him, having Gordon. Why they let Lindsey go? That was a very good 1-2 punch combination. It was a very bizarre situation, if you ask me. Again, another running back. I wish.
Look, he might fill that Phillip Lindsay role, which when Gordon was healthy, he would take off a few series. Phillip Lindsay would come in, but he also became a third down back also. So I really think we're going to, but that's not Javonte's strength. So that's why I'm very curious about this, and I think we have to see what happens also during preseason and check out the health. Another running back from the same school as Javonte that was taken pretty high is Michael Carter. He went to the Jets, and if Belt Loops tells me he's going to take him high along with Zach Wilson, we're going to have a problem.
We're looking for a new
answer. Where does Michael Carter fit into this when they've got Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman and LaMichael Pirine? I know those aren't big names, but do you draft Michael Carter?
He's draftable, but again, this is another RB3 flex situation. They just brought over Tevin Coleman, who did not look. He wasn't getting used properly in San Francisco, but the guy's a talent. They got Ty Johnson. Again, it's an offensive line that is starting to get anchored. It's not there yet. They haven't been able to run the ball in New York for years. So he'll get drafted. Again, this is another guy. You're going to see the run on running backs in the middle round. But until he shows us something, this is a guy you're going to draft middle to late rounds as an RB3 flex type player generally.
And to piggyback right off of that, since, like, as you said, that offensive line up there for the Jets is not built yet, do you trust a rookie running back to be the one getting most of the balls back there? Or do you give it to somebody else? And
can he protect? Right, you're going to have your future QB, the QB of the future there. Can he protect the quarterback?
Right, and do you want to have young rookie quarterback handing it off to run young rookie running back? Think there might not be chemistry yet. Never know what could happen back there.
That's interesting. As far as viable, out of the gate, startable fantasy football running backs, this was a very weak rookie class. I'm not saying what they're going to be possibly years to come, but last year you knew what you had in CEH, Jonathan Taylor. It took a little while for Detroit to pick up on Swift and really start feeding him. But other than Najee
and Dylan.
Yeah, Dylan, exactly. AJ Dillon, it took them for a little while over there to really start feeding him. Dobbins, but again, also a running back by committee situation. There's one bell cow in this class, and the others, it's all going to be remains to be seen. So it's kind of interesting. It's been a weak year for fantasy starters out of this rookie draft.
I agree. Okay, so we're gonna jump to rookie wide receivers, and this is a great crop of guys that we have to determine. But Give us a call. Let us know your thoughts. 772-800-BUZZ, 772-800-2899. You can ask us a question on the phone, or you can leave a comment in the Facebook Live or YouTube Live section, and we will get it on the air. Let's jump over to our rookie wide receivers. Now, you remember the old adage they used to say that you never start a rookie wide receiver and that they're not going to ever be good until their sophomore season? Things have really shifted and changed over the years in the NFL. We saw what CeeDee Lamb did. I mean, there's so many examples of wide receivers that have really come in as rookies and torn it up. Justin Jefferson. I mean, we can go down the list. So we've got a bunch of wide receivers. I would say that the top three is obviously we have, in whatever order, Jamar Chase, Jaylen Waddle, and Devonta Smith. So let's start with Jamar Chase. Went to the Bengals with the number 3 pick. Do you draft Jamar Chase? Let's assume Burrow's okay. Let's start there. If Joe Burrow is healthy and he's starting, are you drafting Jamar Chase? And if you are, is he your wide receiver 1, 2? Where do you draft him?
So of the three, what's the most important thing for a wide receiver other than your own talent? And I know you know the answer to this, Commish. The guy getting you the football.
Yeah.
So with Chase, you've got Joe Burrow, who was kind of having Justin Herbert numbers for a while there. As a rookie quarterback, the guy was putting up yards and points. And of course, this is an old tandem coming back together. So long story short, you're definitely drafting Chase. And I honestly think with that chemistry and them having a horrific time being able to run the ball in Cincinnati, I think Chase is literally drafted as a wide receiver 2 and can play up to wide receiver 1 potential. Of the three, I think he has the most upside, and he's the one that will be drafted as, somewhere in the top 25 to 30 wide receivers out there, and has a tremendous amount of upside.
What about you, Loopy? What do you think?
I definitely agree on the upside of Jamar Chase. And as we just said, aside from a receiver's own talent, you need the person throwing you the ball to have some sort of talent. But what about the people protecting that guy throwing the ball? They took Jamar Chase over a generational talent in Penny Sewell.
Yep.
And I'm not saying Jamar Chase is going to be bad this year. I think it just depends on – I don't want him to, but are they going to be able to protect Burrow this year, or is it going to be Ryan Finley having to throw to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins out there? And at that point, it's a lot of hypotheticals, but that's fantasy football for you.
Yeah, and the Bengals didn't address the offensive line in the draft. They did get Riley Reif, which could help on the right side, but still, that's not enough for me. You've got Higgins, you've got Tyler Boyd. Now you're bringing in Jamar Chase. You have Joe Mixon. The balls are going to be distributed all over the place. I'm not reading absolutely anything into this, but some of the videos I saw out of Bengals camp, Chase was not doing a good job of holding on to the ball. And if he doesn't instill that kind of confidence in that system, I don't know. I know that he and Burrow obviously played for LSU, but I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, so because Chase was out last year, they haven't thrown the ball to each other in a long time. I don't know if they still have that chemistry. It's not the same line. In fact, that LSU line is probably better than what the Bengals have right now.
Yeah. Jamar Chase has not played since they won the national championship, I believe.
Okay. All right. So that being said, I agree with you guys. I have him as a wide receiver 2 with an upside wide receiver 1, maybe around the 6th or 7th round. But again, with all of these rookies, and I keep going back to this, I've got to see what preseason looks like in order to really see what kind of scheme, even though they don't really scheme for preseason, but you start to get an idea, especially that second to last preseason game where they have their starters, and you can kind of get an idea of where they want to go. I always tell this story of preseason 100 years ago when Etienne James from the University of Miami, the running back, was a rookie. And I actually had, I think, the 2nd pick in the draft. And Etienne James wasn't projected to go until the end of the first round in fantasy draft at the time. And I actually took him number 2 because of preseason. And I saw that nobody could tackle this guy. And he caught every pass out of the backfield. And of course, he turned out probably to be the second best running back that year, I think, outside of Emmitt Smith. But the point being, we got to look at preseason on these guys before we can determine if they're going to be any good. But I do like the idea that Boyd and Higgins are there to kind of take some of the pressure off of him. But what about Jaylen Waddle, right? He's coming into a similar situation where you have Parker and Fuller. Are there enough balls to be spread around in Miami for Waddle to get fantasy numbers?
It's such a good question. There's such a it's a very enigmatic situation. How is Tua going to do? And that is how Waddle is going to go. But if you think about the situation, you're talking about 2 offensive coordinators that are new to the position, right? In Miami. But what is the best way to build a quarterback's confidence and get him in a rhythm and feeling good about running the offense? Those short, quick slants across the middle of the field, putting it in the hands of a guy that averages 18 yards per reception. So this is on paper. Waddle looks like he should be anywhere between 65, 75 receptions at a minimum. That would be awesome, right? But why wouldn't you give him just short those? Look, Tua's an accurate passer. He's another year removed from the injury, feeling a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident. You got to think they're going to get the ball in the Waddle's hands 6 yards across the middle and let him do his thing. How relevant he's going to be? I think he's going to be drafted as a late wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 3, just because of the uncertainty of Tua. But he could very much play way into his upside because this guy is a Tyreek Hill type talent. I know he hates hearing that, but he absolutely at any time is completely able to break a big play, and he's shown it all throughout his college career. So I like Jamar Chase better just because he's behind Burrow, and bad line or not, that ball was distributed well, and Boyd and Higgins put up numbers, and Chase is much better than both of them. I really believe that. Waddle, I'm curious to see how this goes, but he's an exciting player that can really play, and who knows where he can take it, but it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I was talking to Loops before the show started about my shirt, thinking that I could probably get away with this being a Waddle jersey as long as I don't turn around and you see Tannehill on the back of it. But in the meantime, I'll take it. I'll represent Waddle. I agree. We got the echo back, by the way. Okay, so plenty of upside with Waddle. Mentioned he's got a crowded backfield or wide receiver core, I should say, with Parker and Fuller. And of course, let's not forget about Preston Williams, who's still there. So will he get enough balls to really have fantasy impact? That's questionable, which is why I think I have him as a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 4, probably somewhere around the 10th round. Now, again, if he becomes the darling of preseason, I may jump higher. Unfortunately, like in our league in South Florida, he's probably going to go a lot higher than your average draft position because everyone's going to want to grab him, including myself. So that should be interesting to see. Devonta Smith is the third guy in this grouping. Won the Heisman Trophy, was questioning whether or not he was the guy that Miami should have taken instead of Jaylen Waddle. He goes to Philadelphia, who has no other wide receivers. What's your take on Devonta Smith and where he falls into this fantasy world?
I agree with you. The biggest problem there is other than Rager, they've got nothing. They got a couple good tight ends over there. But you know what? I really like Jalen Hurts. He last year in a very limited playing time, he showed he could ball out. I mean, he can move the ball with his feet, which opens up the passing for him because you have to respect his ability to run. Again, it's a wide receiver. It's a first-year wide receiver, but Devonta Smith, is a good fit into that system, and I'm actually glad the Dolphins didn't take him because they have Parker and Williams. They need a Waddle type. Devonta Smith isn't that kind of elusive. He's a contested ball type catcher, and I think he's gonna. I don't know, fantasy wise. Again, this to me probably more of, I don't know, Heisman Trophy, but to me this is a back end wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 3. Got to see how Hurts does, but I think the potential for 60, 70 grabs, bumping up to maybe 1,000 yards, 7, 8 touchdowns exists for him because he's a talent, and I think he does have a quarterback that'll be able to get on the ball.
Mm-hmm. I was reading an article on Devonta Smith, and they used one word to describe what type of receiver he is, and they said he's slippery. And I think that's exactly what type of receiver they need him to be for Philadelphia, is somebody who can escape, somebody who can get away, as long as Jalen Hurts can get him the ball.
Yeah, I agree, and I actually have him ranked above Jaylen Waddle for fantasy purposes. If I owned the Dolphins, I wouldn't have taken Smith. I would have taken Waddle. But as far as fantasy goes, I do have Devonta Smith ahead of Jaylen Waddle, mainly because of the fact they really have no one else to rely on, and they're going to have
not as much talent up there right now.
Yeah, they're going to have to throw to him. So I have him as a wide receiver 3 or 4, just like I did with Jaylen, but I would take him in the 9th round instead of in the 10th round, where I would wait for Waddle at that point.
So, Commish, let's go on record. Just between the 3, I already know one was over the other. Rank them by end of year, and we're talking strictly fantasy output, fantasy production. Rank those 3.
I think it's going to be, honestly, I think it's going to be Smith, then Chase, then Waddle.
Wow, you have Smith over Chase.
I wouldn't draft Smith over Chase. You're just asking me if I'm guessing here. The reason is I'm still not convinced that Burrow is 100% healthy. I'm still not convinced that he's going to take over for Higgins or Boyd. I don't see it. And I know A.J. Green's not there and that Chase is going to step in and try to fill that void. But Higgins was really coming on. I just don't – I just see the need for Smith in Philadelphia as being so much greater. And the amount of targets that Smith is going to get, to me, is going to be probably double what Chase or Waddle gets. And that's why I think there's just more potential there.
I'm going to leave this right here, though. 84 catches, 1,780 yards, and 20 touchdowns. That's Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase. Those are their numbers together. So I hear what you're saying, and they're valid. It's valid. But me personally, there are more mouths to feed in Cincinnati, but they cannot run the ball there. And their defense is a little bit better. It's definitely a little bit better. But I still think it's going to be the Burrow to Chase show, and it's going to go Burrow. Unfortunately, Waddle at the end with Smith sandwiched in the middle.
So, Loops, one of your jobs as producers to keep track of these bets that we have. Because I just bet
all year.
I just bet 2020 $1 that Devonta Smith will have a better fantasy year than Jamar Chase.
Send them in the group chat. I'll write them down. I'll keep track of them.
All right.
By the way, this is literally every show. Literally every show.
Sounds good.
You got to keep track. All right. So let's do this. There's a few other receivers. I'll just mention your name. You tell me whether or not you would draft them and you know whether or not they're even fantasy worthy. But Kadarius Toney with the New York Giants.
No, not with Galladay over there and what they already have, and Daniel Jones throwing the ball. I probably would not draft him.
Okay, Rashod Bateman, Baltimore.
No.
Okay, Elijah Moore, New York Jets.
Yes, because I just think he's going to end up being the best wide receiver on that team. So I would take him late. But yes.
You think he's going to do better than Jamison Crowder?
I mean, Crowder is, when healthy, he was a target receiving monster.
Yeah.
But that was for Sam Darnold. So it's a new quarterback. I do like Crowder. He's just the guy will get you 10 grabs a game every time he's healthy. But I just like Elijah Moore. I think he'll be ultimately the yardage guy, the touchdown guy there.
Is Elijah Moore John Brown?
Oh, wow. It's a really interesting comparison.
I'm just asking. I don't know. let's talk about the other Moore, Rondale Moore in Arizona, right? They've got Hopkins, they got AJ Green and in free agency for whatever that's worth. And Christian Kirk was kind of hanging around, and so is Andy Isabella. Does Rondale Moore do anything? Is he worth picking up?
You know, it's interesting. Christian Kirk quietly started putting up some fantastic numbers last year because Murray can really get the ball downfield. But there's mouths to feed there, and Murray does so much of the damage himself on the ground. I mean, he's draftable, but I would put him late rounds, if anything, as a wide receiver 3.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's fair enough. And then, of course, there's Amari Rodgers. He got taken by Green Bay. We don't know if it's going to be Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love or Blake Bortles throwing the ball to him. But they've got Alan Lazard, of course, Devonta. And they've got MVS still from USF, Go Bulls. And they have Amari Rodgers. So is he draftable?
If anything, as a wide receiver 4, because that is and always has and will be the Davante Adams show with the occasional 3 games that MVS shows up. Lazard, every year there's hype around him. His numbers really never produce because it's all Davante Adams all day in Green Bay. And then, of course, you have the big question mark, who's going to be throwing the ball. Personally, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to play, even though it's never going to happen. But if anything, then Amari Rodgers, to me, back ends as a late wide receiver 3, early wide receiver 4. Probably not draftable.
Brad seems to disagree
agrees with you. Okay, so Cyclops, if you're listening and you're on, and again, we wish you the best for your family, but 2020 and I have a bet with regard to the 3 wide receivers with Jamar Chase, Jaylen Waddle, and Devonta Smith, who will have the most fantasy points at the end of the year. If you want in on the bet, you got to let us know who you want.
I think I'll have to let you know about that one.
Funny if Love Rodgers connection though. Oh, right, with Jordan Love and Rodgers. Yes,
actually, that's what I was about to say. Is what Brad just brought up. I think if Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball, Amari Rodgers does not get touches. But if it's Blake Bortles or Jordan Love, if you've noticed in the past, these backup quarterbacks have connections with people who might not be your team's number 1 receiver. Because it might not be who they're throwing to in practice. I think if it's Jordan Love or Blake Bortles, I think Amari Rodgers becomes a little more productive than if it's Aaron Rodgers back there.
All right. That's a good take. I don't disagree with you. So Brad says Chase. So it looks like I'm either in $2 or out $2. So
Cyclop rank
I should
the
have had
3.
better odds.
Rank the 3: Chase, Smith, Waddle. Kind of curious, 1st to 3rd. Obviously, Chase is 1st. Who do you have 2nd and 3rd between Waddle and Devonta Smith?
You're asking me?
No, Brad.
Oh.
Well, yeah, you can tell us while we're waiting for Brad to answer.
Yeah, Josh, tell us as well.
Yeah, so okay, I have Devonta Smith 1. Hate me, I got Jaylen Waddle 2 and Jamar Chase 3.
I understand. So you have Devonta Smith number 1.
Yeah.
All
Not
right.
even being a Dolphins fan, am I putting Jaylen Waddle 2? I think Devonta Smith will probably easily be the number 1 fantasy leader out of those 3.
Wow.
But I think up in Cincinnati, I think it's kind of up in the air there. In Miami, I don't think he'll have a problem.
See, that's the thing, Keith, is that I don't see Chase stepping in and automatically being the better receiver between Higgins and Boyd. I think that Chase has to build his way up there, and then even if he does, there's just not going to be enough balls to go around. And that was my problem with Waddle. Do I think Waddle is better than Parker or Fuller right now? No, not yet. But he's got the skills that will get him, like you said, a lot of those slants, a lot of those dig routes. But, I just don't see that with Chase. And they should have gone with Penei Sewell or somebody else at that point.
Well, I agree with that. They're crazy to not have taken Penei Sewell because he's a generational offensive lineman. And they had
100%.
Higgins and they had Boyd. and they're, and they could have drafted someone else later on. But I mean, Chase is a talent, and I see him doing not quite as good as Justin Jefferson did in his, obviously, which is breakout rookie year. But I see him pushing numbers that are going to be a little bit less than that. I just think the connection with them is too strong, and they are going to be throwing the ball a lot.
I'm always very curious, and this is outside of fantasy football for a second. We'll end our show here with this question, but when we're talking about drafting and the fact that they could have gone with the offensive lineman, do you think that general managers are influenced by public opinion when it comes to who they should have drafted or should draft versus who might be best for the team, that kind of gets overshadowed? We were talking about Atlanta going for Kyle Pitts, right, instead of grabbing a quarterback at that spot. Do people get caught up in the media and public perception, these general managers, or do you think that I'm just being silly when I think that?
I don't think it's silly. I think it's the first logical thought, but I think the answer is really no. I think it is such a game of chess, and they use so much mathematical material, like their own algorithms to look at it, and they have a game plan that they want to go by, and they have their war room, and they have next best available player up during and they're always changing things around. It is interesting though what you're talking about Atlanta, because now you're talking about someone that has just been a part of the organization for such a long time, and Matt Ryan, who could still play. It was very surprising that they did not take a quarterback with his declining play last year. And it's a valid question because, why wouldn't they? Was his length with the team, some of that public, because he's so beloved in Atlanta. But to me, the way I look at those guys, the way I envision GMs is that they have a game plan of knowing position by position really who and what they want. And if things aren't falling into place, which often it doesn't, they kind of already have set in their minds who is the next best player up to fit the position they need. And they're not influenced by that public opinion, that they stick to their game plan.
I think I believe they are influenced by public opinion, maybe just through the first round. If you want to sell tickets, I think, like, if you look at the Jaguars, if they took Zach Wilson number one, that team is, I mean, Trevor Lawrence was clearly the number one pick, but if that team was like, I see all the fans, they want us to take Zach Wilson all of a sudden, do they take him to sell tickets, or do they take him because they think he's the better quarterback? But in this case, it was Trevor Lawrence. So I don't know what I'm trying to say. But what I am trying to say is, look at this. I'll use a better example. Everybody thought the Dolphins were going to take Devonta Smith. They thought they were going to take him at 3. They thought they were going to take him at 6. We took Jaylen Waddle. Kind of a smokescreen. Nobody thought we were taking Jaylen Waddle until maybe a couple of days before the draft. I think you might draft somebody within the same position, but maybe not the same person 100% of the time.
Okay. But then you just have blatant stupid moves like the Giants, who had the number 11 pick, right? They moved down. They could have gotten Slater. They could have gotten Vera Tucker at 11. Instead, they trade down. They get Kadarius Toney. Now, I know they picked last year. They had the number 1 pick. They took an offensive tackle. So maybe they thought they don't want to do it again, and they have to get somebody flashy to put butts in the seats. But it's just so interesting. All right, so Brad says that thinks – okay, so his order is Chase and then Smith, and I guess Waddle after that. And he says he thinks Chase runs away with this bet, thinks he's the best route runner and deep threat for these guys. And he's already second best receiver, and I kind of see him as this year's Justin Jefferson. No. Second best on that team. I think he's better than Higgins. Okay. All right. We'll see what happens. See if Team Commish and Loops beats Team Cyclops in 2020 on this one. All right, guys. So that does it. Next week, we're going to start getting into the meat and potatoes, right? We're going to start looking at the different divisions. Who are we drafting? Maybe we'll talk about different positions. Who are the best people to draft, and the first round, second round, we'll figure it out. And of course, we're always here to take your calls. So next week, next Tuesday night, 8:00, give us a call, join us. We'd love to see you. In the meantime, hope everyone on Commish, hope everyone has a really good week. Loops 2020, you want to say goodbye here?
Bye.
Yeah, nice driving, Commish. Good. You gotta love Loops, our little Jets intern. But yeah, great show tonight. A lot of fun, and keep watching. We're gonna have great stuff for you all throughout the year. Nice job,
All right,
Commish.
take care,
Good job,
everyone.
Loops.